Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and today I am going to answer a question that I have been asked many times as a YouTuber who focuses on Sword Art Online games, and that question is, which Sword Art Online game should I get first? For those of you who are not patient that result in my audience retention to maintain at 30%, the answer is either follow the chronology and start with Hollow Fragment, which is the default answer for someone who just wants to follow the story, or a definitive Hollow Realization if you just want a good gaming experience as a whole package. Now that the video is done, for the impatient ones, I would appreciate if you at least click on that like button before you leave, because now I am going to go more in depth with my reasoning with a lot of talking. Let me start by saying this video has been created in March 2018. As of today, there are only 5 console/PC Sword Art Online games available, those being Hollow Fragment, Lost Song, Hollow Realization, Accel World vs Sword Art Online, and Fatal Bullet, in that chronological order. If you're watching this video in the future, chances are more games have already been released, but me not being a fortune teller, those future games are not included in this video. Now, as I said at the beginning, if you're here to just follow the Gameverse's story after at least experiencing the Ainground arc of the main series and don't really care about the gameplay all that much, my initial suggestion stands. You should start with Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment, which starts at the floor 75 duel between Kirito and Heathcliff, separating the game continuity from the main canon by taking it to a completely different direction. To follow the story after Hollow Fragment, you of course continue with Lost Song, followed by Hollow Realization, and eventually Fatal Bullet. Keep in mind that from all the information we have so far, Accel World vs Sword Art Online, while seemingly taking place in the Gameverse continuity on a surface level, is most probably just a standalone game/adventure and is not actually part of the Gameverse canon due to everlasting consequences of that game that cannot be fixed, being absolutely non-existent in Fatal Bullet, as well as the game going above and beyond that being total nonsense on many aspects, including directly contradicting the events of previous games. As for those of you who are asking based on the quality of the games, the scope of the games, the entertainment value, the ambition of the games, the answer easily becomes Hollow Realization. Hollow Realization, developed by Kureha, is still the golden standard of an SAO game from a storytelling perspective, including the characterization/portrayal of individual characters, as well as offering a very ambitious and grand feeling game with over 100 hours of stuff to do and an intricate combat system that is actually fun, as well as including things to grind for without boring you to hell. But to be more specific, let me talk about the other games first and what they do wrong, or at least they do insufficiently. Hollow Fragment, the very first Sword Art Online game, again developed by Kureha, which is an extended remake of the PSP game Infinity Moment, tells the story of what would happen if the players had to clear all 100 floors, while the remake additional story called the Hollow Story is a parallel adventure that takes place in a discarded area of Ainground. While the Hollow Story is by far the best story that game has to offer, with decent story pacing, enough mystery to keep you interested, and a generally fun structure, the same cannot be said about the Ainground story. Sure, the players now have to clear the 100 floors, but that's pretty much it. There is literally nothing to do but clearing those floors. While playing through Ainground, you will soon realize the entire story is mostly inconsequential and you're just in for a slogfest that requires you to do the same things, same objectives over and over with minimal rewards, that is, just clearing floors. Writers tried shaping things up by also adapting certain aspects from the Fairy Dance storyline as well as an original story to the last floors, but again, the journey is so long that the barren story they are trying to convey here is stretched incredibly thin that it makes you lose interest in what is going on, and the fact of the matter is, while it offers a variety of sword skills, they all feel so clunky and slow that you can't really shake off the feeling that you're just doing the same thing over and over again due to the adrenaline just not being there to distract you. The next game, Sword Art Online Lost Song, takes place a little after Hollow Fragment and inside the world of ALfheim Online. It is developed by Art and features a completely different gameplay formula. I like to call Lost Song as the caliber arc of the Gameverse, since there's absolutely no tension or barely anything to reach out to your feelings in the story compared to every other game or arc there is. It is borderline inconsequential, and the conflict between Kirito and Seven, a newcomer to the series, is absolutely artificial and relies on Kirito just deciding to be just a dick, since the experiment Seven is conducting is not illegal by any means and literally has no negative effect that would put it in a gray area. It is no different than a game offering you an optional survey to ask for your opinions. But Kirito decides it's somehow unethical because the game needs a conflict. The story is not something you have to experience, you know, and to be frank, the gameplay is not either. While it is most certainly faster than what Hollow Fragment offered, it feels incredibly stiff and scripted. Not in a quick time events kind of scripted, but all your sword skills are scripted in such a way that in case of your enemy moving an inch to the side during your attack animation, will result in your sword skills completely missing the target because apparently the sword skill doesn't lock onto the target for some reason. To add to that, the skills do not feel powerful. I know I go a lot talking about the feeling of things, but let's be honest, we play a fantasy game to feel powerful. For all the negatives Hollow Fragment did, the spectacle of a skill was not one of them. Every skill you used was grand thanks to the effects used on your skill. Lost Song was definitely missing that feeling, and that is the biggest mistake a game based on the power fantasy can commit. Not feeling powerful. Hollow Realization came after Lost Song, once again switching back to the initial developers Akuria, and Akuria Shurasel took this chance. Hollow Realization is essentially an upgraded Hollow Fragment, but damn aren't these upgrades great. We have a much bigger, much more ambitious, much more visually impressive game while we dive into this brand new adventure in the Gameverse taking place in a game imitating the world before Ainground. You have all your sword skills with all the weapon types and a whole lot more. You have the best characterization in the Gameverse, not relying too heavily on fan service and still offering emotional / intimate moments between the characters much better than any other Gameverse game did so far. The gameplay feels fast, responsive and actually fun thanks to the new mechanics. Despite being repetitive, you will never feel like doing anything repetitive because the fast-paced action is there to distract you. The skills are once again great showcases of power and it's a joy to use them, while the in-game mechanics are much less limiting than what caused Hollow Fragment gameplay to feel like a slog. While the story premise is somewhat similar to the original Ainground, the single twist takes the stakes away from the players and puts it on something they care about deeply, and for those interested, the story actually has a nice question for you to think about at the end. Story pacing is much better than what was present in Hollow Fragment. You will feel the story moving forward consistently instead of going through huge chunks of gameplay before you proc the next story advancement. There is fun grind involved with the amazing post-game content that will reward you with even better and more impressive gear to equip. And then there's the DLC episodes, which I have to say is actually damn worth it just for the side stories alone, let alone the main campaign it offers. If I have to criticize one thing about Hollow Realization, it's the fact that the main campaign ending literally incentivizes you to get the DLC by leaving it on a cliffhanger, which is not a practice I can get behind, but then again, the DLC is so worth it, so I'm not gonna complain about it too much. Hollow Realization is by far the golden standard for an SAO game at the moment. Now, around these points in time in real life, in a weird time frame, Accel World vs Sword Art Online decided to come out, actually intervening with the release schedule of Hollow Realization DLCs, and this was actually the point where I started getting the questions about the games as well. This game effectively cannibalized the sales of Hollow Realization, and the release schedule and the effort that went into this game was the proof that Accel World vs SAO was just a damn blatant cash grab. It is once again developed by Art and it is once again just the same as Lost Song. In my first impressions video, I gave the game the benefit of the doubt for the minor improvements I saw during the early sections of the game, hoping for more improvements to be featured in general towards the, after the tutorial part. But I was thoroughly disappointed. The entire game feels like a story expansion for Lost Song, with the improvements between the two games being even less worthy than what Hollow Realization offered as free gameplay improvement patches. This is topped off by the worst personality portrayal of individual characters in the entire series, turning every side event into a fan service event, and the main story that does not explain integral story bits properly, making you question your sanity during the time travel parts, which is a huge shame considering this game actually had the best premise in the entire Gameverse, having a very personal and touching story for the main characters. And don't get me even started on the DLC. The single DLC this game has offers less content than a single DLC chapter Hollow Realization offered. I am quite glad this game is not considered a part of the Gameverse canon, and am quite sad that it managed to be nothing more than a blatant cash grab. Such an amazing premise could have been handled in a much better way. Sadly, Accel World vs SAO is effectively filled with events that are essentially what SAO haters think SAO is. Just a cash grab in the form of a collection of fan service episodes. And last but not least, we got Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, the game that was teased back in Hollow Realization and finally took place in Gun Gale Online. This one is developed by Dimps Corporation and is essentially your Freedom Wars successor if you ever encountered that franchise on your PS Vita. It is a third-person looter shooter that is completely different from the previous games. While I had incredibly high hopes for this game considering the success of Freedom Wars, I was left slightly disappointed. Again, it's a game with a great premise that doesn't quite live up to it. For the first time, you actually play as your own personal character and you see and experience Kirito from a third-person perspective, which is a neat change for once. The problem is, the game was heavily advertised as your choices will have effects on the world, which turned out to be heavily false advertising. You have dialogue choices in the game for your own character, which results in just minuscule changes in the sentence that follows yours, which has absolutely no effect in the world. And the one meaningful choice you make at the end of the game is kind of bogged down by the game offering a third true ending option, which leads to your choice effectively not having any effect whatsoever in the world, considering the canon result is already there. I don't even know what to say. The story pacing is extremely off as well, and most characters don't feel natural as to how they got so close to your character. 60% of the game you will be collecting materials without advancing the story anywhere, which feels a lot like playing Hollow Fragment again. You just do stuff without any real payoff, turning the majority of the story campaign into a slogfest. I have to mention the difficulty curve here as well. The game forces you to grind outside of the story because the story events alone are not enough to carry you through the story. You will feel extremely powerless and fragile unless you do your own grinding elsewhere. Overall, while I put this game in the second spot for my best Gameverse game recommendation, it is truly disappointing that I expected this game to actually top that chart by miles considering the build up for it. But again, that's it from me today. If you're looking for the best what the Gameverse has to offer, go ahead and grab yourself Sword Art Online Hollow Realization. You will not regret it. If you want more in-depth looks into these games, I have my reviews available on my channel with a lot more information on the individual games. For more videos, make sure to click on that subscribe button and hit that bell icon to enable notifications. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and share, and you can also support my channel directly on patreon.com/Gamerturk or by sponsoring me here on YouTube Gaming and help me create more content. You can also find me on facebook.com/Gamerturk and on Twitter at Gamerturk95. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.